This is the Decarbonization Disruptors Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Cohen. On this episode of our podcast, I am very pleased to welcome Selinay Parlak, co-founder and COO of Bluedot. Founded in 2021, Bluedot's mission is to transform future electricity usage through data-driven energy solutions, making EV living easier, safer, more exciting, and completely effortless everywhere and at all times. Selinay, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm excited to talk about a lot of great things that you're doing. And I wanted to learn more about you first. I know you have kind of an extensive background in other areas, and obviously Cleantech has been your focus last few years. So I wanted to understand kind of how you came into the Cleantech world and why you chose to focus on the EV and electricity uses as a focus of your career.
Yeah, so I grew up in Turkey. I was always really excited about building a company, building a generational company. And I basically encountered with electric vehicles for a while ago. It's been more than 6 years. And when I learned about the technology and then the fact that they are transforming the full transportation, I got really excited. And when it comes to Cleantech, I always believe that our choices today profoundly shape the tomorrow. And for me, focusing on Cleantech was the best way to influence the future and then basically affect the children, grandchildren that my grandchildren might inherit. And the thing is, the challenges of climate change and sustainability are not abstract. They're here today and they're deeply personal to me as well. And also, back in the time and still, Cleantech represented the combination of opportunity and urgency. And it was where we can directly impact, translate the impact in the industry, whether it's reducing emissions, improving energy efficiency, or enabling more sustainable way of living. And it's currently my way of contributing. And I personally care a lot about building a successful company, but at the same time, working on something that makes the world better every other day. So,
yeah, and I'm sure that motivation came through. I saw that you were named in 2023 the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, which is an amazing accomplishment. I wanted to learn more about kind of that, what that experience was like. I mean, I imagine the first Forbes 30 Under 30 kind of post-COVID, where you got to meet people in person. So I want to learn about kind of what that experience was like for you, and then kind of what your takeaway was from other people that you were involved with in that process, and kind of what you saw their motivations were, just kind of your overall thoughts on and what you took away from that experience.
Yeah. I mean, being named Forbes 30 Under 30 is honestly more like a byproduct of the work I have been privileged to pursue for a long time. And it's an incredible honor. And I try to not let recognitions define what is more important. Usually that's what people see. But in the grand scheme of the things that we're working towards transforming EV fleet management and advancing clean tech solutions, and mostly these type of stuff feels more secondary. But what really stood out for me in that ecosystem and the people who got these honors was the drive that people have, the drive towards different things. And it can be whether it's a healthcare, education, manufacturing, or climate tech. I think these all these people approach these challenges quite intensely. That's what they care about, and they know that they in the world to be able to make an impact. There are areas of expertise. Everybody has a different type of an area, and then you choose and you execute towards that, and that's kind of how you make an impact. And there's no single way of making an impact. I think that's what was quite inspiring for me, seeing different areas, seeing that how people are excited about different fields. And ultimately, my intention was to stay connected with the network of those bold thinkers that are quite ambitious, and I love surrounding myself with the ambitious people. At the end, at the core, my focus stays the same, and that's kind of where the real value lies. To create an impact and create something that people want. But it's been a great experience, great cohort, lots of inspiring people, and when you see these type of people everyday life, it gives a lot of fuel, passion. So
Sure.
That's what I like.
Yeah, no, it's great. And obviously, the impact you're making is at Bluedot. And I wanted to learn more about what you're doing now at Bluedot, and specifically, the offering that you provide with the ability to manage different types of EV fleets. And I'll love to learn more about what you're bringing to the table there.
Yeah. So I think the insight that that we got as a company, that we had as a company, and we still have, is when we think about electrification, the way that we're also operating these vehicles and this large amount of assets are changing. So the things that we care about is changing. It's no longer fueling. It's no longer the same maintenance. It is different type of fueling. It's different type of a maintenance. So that was really interesting. And when we think about a fleet landscape, that's where we're in, where we're focused on, the impact becomes 100x. You're not managing one vehicle. There's 100 vehicles, plus 100 vehicles. I mean, so for me, making that transition seamless for those fleets have been the main focus. And our platform today handles the complexity of managing diverse fleets. And when we talk about managing fleets, we mainly focus on charging side of the things. And there are different ways of charging. You can charge at home, workplace, depot, public. So it wasn't like that when we were thinking about fuel economy. It was just you go to a gas station and you get your gas. So our main intention, okay, can we streamline this operations for fleets that are already transition or making specific transition plans, and how we can provide those tech stacks so that they feel, okay, when I have these vehicles, I can manage charging, I can manage these vehicles, I can make sure that drivers understand what I am saying and what these vehicles bring as a change. So that's the main thing that we do. We do that in 3 different angles. We provide a public charging access. So our drivers, the drivers that we work can go any charging station and they can basically get the charging payments done. It's fuel card, but for EVs. And the second angle is we do home charging reimbursements. Is if you charge at home, as an employee, you should be reimbursed for it, and you should be reimbursed for it accurately. So that's why we put a lot of work around that. And then we also do vehicle analytics and management on top of that, and then bringing different pieces together for our fleet clients.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear, given where you come from, what industries are seeing the biggest growth in EV fleet management? Because I mean, I can just tell you, maybe it's just where we are in Northeast Ohio, but I can't remember last time I saw an Amazon truck that wasn't electric. I mean, they're everywhere now, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was curious if it's going to be more. We're seeing this more in school bus systems. We're seeing it more, obviously, on the commercial delivery side. Where's kind of the next big growth in EV fleets that you think your solution would really fit best? Yeah.
So currently, what we're fitting the best, and that's kind of what we see the most electrification in fleets, is light duty passenger vehicles. So when people when we say people a fleet, they will just they imagine these big trucks. And there are those are also part of different fleets, but it's not the only ones. When we talk about fleets, there are a lot of different fleet types. There can be a corporate fleets. These can be big sales organizations, sales reps working in a different corporate fleet, and telecom, insurance, pharma, right? These are different segments that we're seeing a lot of electrification, because these big companies have goals around ESG. They are intentional about their carbon footprint, and they want to make sure that they can make a change. And that's an area that you can a lot more easily adapt in. And we're seeing a lot of transition there, a lot of big growth. And that's kind of where we focused on as well. I'm also seeing a lot of delivery, in-city delivery, last mile delivery type of contexts, being electrified. We're talking autonomous vehicles all day long right now. That's one of the other areas that is kind of leading the electrification too. So I will say more a light, medium duty vehicles are getting electrified. I think there's going to be a lot more movement in basically heavy duty as well, but it's just not there yet. It's getting there. There's a lot more effort, but I think it takes time. So,
and I'd be curious to ask a follow up to that. In that light duty commercial sector, what is the biggest headwind that you're facing when you're talking to a company that may not have electrified fleets and maybe wants to get there, but it hasn't quite seen the ROI? Is it just basically here's enough ROI to make it worth it for you, or what's been that tipping point to get them over the hump of, yeah, it's time to electrify our fleet and go that route?
Yeah. So, I mean, gonna be quite blunt around this. It's just like a lot of people are having a hard time with change management. It scares them. It's like, oh, electric vehicles? No, I don't want, because like it's something that they don't know. They will need to deal with a lot of different new changes. So I see a lot of hesitancy from like the people who are managing the fleets internally. Like, and then like even even if they are like if they know the benefits, I think making the real change is hard. Like, yes, you order these vehicles, you're going to make sure that like drivers are educated. There's going to be a lot of work around that. And I see a lot of people also like bringing a lot of like just reasons around this. Oh, what about like in the winter? Yes, winter is the case, but that's something that you can also find different solutions around it. So I see like most of the blockers is like in the mind. I see a lot of fleets making a really great use cases, and maybe like sharing those use cases will be a lot more helpful rather than, okay, like these are the 10 reasons that I wouldn't go electric. And like, I'm an optimist. Like, I build a company, I'm like a full-time, I believe that there can be a change. And the way to do it is like basically checking the use cases, learning from the others. And there is not like too much of our resources still. I think that's something that we're lacking as an industry too. Like, yes, we talk about like overall high level stuff, but when we go like in the like deep level of like operations, there are a lot of like questions. So I think like looking at different use cases, like working on more case studies, I think is going to be quite crucial for us. Like, okay, I have a similar fleet. Yes, I have, let's say, 70 vehicles that are mix of Teslas, non-Teslas, like going X, Y, and Z. Can I find a similar use case that has done that before? If not, can I like simulate it? Like, can I actually try with 10 vehicles, with 20 vehicles? Like, how does that work? What type of like groups want? I think a lot of people like don't talk great about like pilots, and they say that like, okay, like pilots don't represent, but that's the way, like that's the way that you're going to make the change. You're going to start from somewhere and then you're going to grow.
It makes perfect sense. And I'd be curious to kind of get your take too on, what technologies are on the horizon for EV charging management. Is it more going to the universal route where everyone will have the same plugin? Is it more AI technology that can be more predictive on energy usage? What's the next step? What's the next evolution in technology that you're seeing that either you'll be able to implement or you'll see down the road that we'll be able to implement for the industry overall?
Yeah. So when we look at overall fleet management, like I am blown away how many of things are being done. Like I go check different dashboards and I'm like, wow, like still these are like done manually. Like it's I think it's like quite crazy. And that's kind of like where we want to also make an impact. We want to support the vehicles that are going electric. That's our main thesis. But also on top of that, like we want to make sure that we provide tools so that people spend more time for more important tasks, not like for all these manual tasks. So for the EV charging side of the things as like our main focus, when it comes to more like an adapters standardization, like or more like making things the same, I think it's going to take time. Like even right now, like we have been using so many different like plug types, but now like we're trying to like make it like in the same form, right? Even when it comes to phones. I think it's going to take time. There's going to be some noise from different places, different countries. And the real thing I think that's going to happen is like, first, yes, we're going to see a lot more impact in overall operations in AI, like simulations. Like maybe we won't need to pilot everything. And then like that's going to maybe help there. And also like these vehicles are like connected assets, right? Like we're getting data and we're starting getting data a lot more. And that's really exciting. Like you previously it was through dongles, you add additional telematics device. Now we're seeing a trend like being more connected with electrification too. So I think that's going to affect a lot. Like imagine there is a device around there, you know a lot of information about that device, you can streamline that operation a lot better. And I think the driver's interaction with the vehicles will change a lot. Like how they interact, how they charge, what they think about is going to change. Like we're charging vehicles overnight at home. We haven't been doing that. Like that's a different thing to think about. So I'm really excited right now, like seeing those different levels of operations, like how like artificial intelligence will change and observe different patterns of behavior, offer different things. There's going to be a lot of improvements in safety side of the things for sure. That's what I'm really excited about. And then on top of that, predictive analytics. I think that's going to be an area that we will see a lot of improvement as well.
Yeah, and going and taking a step back more generally too, I was wanting to get your take on, and this is this is a question we could probably do an hour on, but I've had a few people on the podcast in the EV space, and what I always like to ask is, what do you think is the biggest pushback? How do we push back against the headwinds of the overall EV revolution? I'm just trying to understand, is it a messaging issue? I mean, for me, I want to get an EV because I never want to look at the price of gas again, right? Mm-hmm. But is it more the people that are pushing back against the EV revolution are louder? Is it just the technology hasn't caught up to mass adoption? How do we push back into those things? What do you think is the catalyst that is keeping us from electrifying at a scale that we're seeing in other countries in Europe, where it's actually cheaper in a lot of places to have an EV rather than a gas-powered vehicle?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not about like only purchasing, like changing from gas to electric. It's more like a complete rethinking of like the policies, infrastructure, behavior. I mean, it's a hot topic, like the tax credits right now, how it's going to impact, right? Like, I think one of the things is like how we think this ecosystem as a whole, and like how stakeholders can play a role. Like in Europe, I mean, I've done a lot of like work in Europe when it comes to EV charging. Yes, it's quite ahead. A lot of things are more policy driven too. And I think US is really unique in a way that there's a lot of policy that is driven by private sector as well, which is an interesting like thing. And I think those are the areas that we need to think more around. But one of the biggest challenges that I see is like perceived cost of electrification. Like, the total cost of ownership is the biggest thing when it comes to fleets. And then like more transparency and education around like the long-term savings. Well, like the math that I'm seeing out there is like, just like, oh, when we think about total cost of ownership, it's like buying the car and then like the fuel cost. It's not that. Like there's so many different areas that like brings costs or cut costs as well. And like we don't have that level of like transparency or either like understanding yet. And I think that's going to be really helpful. And then I think like, for example, as Bluedot, what we do is like trying to show like how much they cut the cost, the fleets that we work with, to showcase like the operational efficiency, what they have been doing before, what they're doing right now. And I think that can shift a lot of perspectives. And also another headwind is like the current state of infrastructure and then the nature of it. And there needs to be more collaboration, and everybody likes to complain and then just like say that it's like a utility problem or like another company problem. But I think which can be true. There is truth in it. But I think we're having like a lot harder time in like those specific collaborations here. And like there needs to be a lot more like specific push as a whole, rather than just like certain industries is pushing and so on. So, and like at the end, also what you said, like narrative matters too. What's the narrative that people are listening? What's they're hearing? That like demand is driven by that a lot here. So like creating and pushing the narrative that like showcases that it can be a path is important. That's kind of like, I personally try to showcase that a lot to my personal network. But at the same time, like the overall media, and that also matters quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. And obviously what you're doing at Bluedot is definitely trying to move that narrative forward, which I think you guys are doing a great job. And I'm excited to see what you have going forward. So in closing, I want to give you the opportunity to share what's going on now at Bluedot, what's upcoming that our audience should know and get excited about.
Yeah. So we recently launched our depot charging tracking. We talk about connected assets, but a lot of companies who have started electrification before, like a while ago, they thought about infrastructure more like, okay, like can we actually like build charging stations that are like cheap, level 2s, a lot of non-connected chargers. And now they're thinking about like, can we actually like report and understand how much, like what's the kilowatt delivered? And we help them to do that and then like make sure that they can do more transparent and like better reporting when it comes to their like charging operations. That's really exciting. We as a team like really good at like product and development. Like we have a huge engineering like team, and obviously like we push a product update every other week. Something that I'm really proud about my team. And we also listen customers a lot. Like we basically hear 2 more times and we go implement. We're not like, okay, we need a year like those corporate companies. And that's something that we need more in the industry. We're currently hiring for our sales roles, which we're really excited about. We have been exponentially growing in the last few years and making like a really fundamental change. And it's like, you can see like it's concrete. And I'm really excited to kind of like fuel that growth with like A+ team members who knows the importance, who knows that like it's not only like coming and managing people and like it's more like making your hands dirty, listening customer, getting that feedback, translating that feedback into a product roadmap. And that's kind of like our core. And I'm really excited that we're expanding our team. And next year, like we've just started. We have been doing like a big waves in fleet management and in the industry. And I'm really excited for the next year to kind of like fuel that growth, add a few more people in our team, and also like make sure that like we're communicating what we're doing with the world. Like people understand what we are building. That's also one of my kind of like goals thinking about next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's all exciting. I think 2025 is going to be an interesting year for the industry as a whole. I think on the whole, it's going to be very positive. So I'm excited to see, how that goes and obviously be a part of it. So again, Selinay, thanks for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate your insight. I'm sure our audience will as well. So again, Selinay Parlak, thanks for taking the time to do this. This is the Decarbonization Disruptors Podcast, and we will see you next time.